The story tells us about a guy named Lou. He was a construction worker who got married not too long ago. One day, while Lou was working at the construction site, he suddenly received a call. Picking up the phone urgently, the co-workers didn't know what Lou heard, but his face immediately changed. Not only that, but he also quit his job and ran away in panic. Certainly something bad had happened. Seeing Lou's reaction, his concerned colleague at the construction site was extremely worried for him. He promised to do the rest of Lou's work until he could return. The place where Lou rushed to was none other than the hospital. His wife Yin had a stroke because of overworking herself. Before Lou reached his wife, Yin already closed her eyes for the last time without any last words for or from him. Tears were rolling down his cheeks. For a while, Lou was able to calm down. He stopped crying for a while in order to comfort his parents-in-law, who were just as heartbroken as he was. They then had to call the funeral service to take his wife's body home. It was the most painful trip of Lou's life. Yin's body, after returning home 2 days later, was buried and a funeral was held. This loss was too great for Lou. Loving Lou's kindness and honesty, many villagers came to burn incense and share his sadness at the funeral. Since the day of his wife's death, Lou hasn't been able to get over his deep depression. He was only working at the construction site and hanging around his house all the time in repetition. One day, while he was sweeping his backyard, suddenly the neighbor's boy ran in with a shocked face. He brought Lou shocking news. He said Yin's grave has been dug up and her body has also mysteriously disappeared. The boy had not finished all the news when Lou's face immediately turned white. He threw the broom aside and ran off to see for himself. What the boy said was totally true. The mass of the topsoil had been dug up by someone, while the lid of the coffin has also been removed. Witnessing the scene in front of him, Lou's entire body became limp. He fell to his knees hopelessly and without strength. In his mind, there was a mix of different emotions which were both painful and confusing. Seeing Lou's state, the boy just looked on silently without uttering a sound, but still silently stood beside him to express his sympathy with Lou's loss. Besides worrying about Lou's feelings, people were also concerned about where Yin's body mysteriously disappeared to. The strange story quickly spread throughout the small village as the police also came to investigate the scene. At this time, Lou seemed to have calmed down. The policeman also began to collect the testimonies of onlookers. Not only the police, but all the villagers also gathered at Yin's grave. They all gossiped noisily about it. Amongst them, there was a very strange old woman talking out loud.
Perhaps Yin was revived to live again and climbed out of her grave herself.
The old woman's words immediately received the attention of everyone around. Everyone knew and argued what she said was nonsense and insensitive. However, some people supported the old woman and said that what she said could be a possibility. Another young man also expressed his strange views. He thought that perhaps Yin died without a reason, so her soul was left restless and couldn't enter heaven. Multiple people came with different points of views and quarreled and debated without end. But who was right and who was wrong, nobody knew, as it was all one big mystery. The investigation didn't seem to have any unusual factors or helpful leads, and the testimonies of people didn't help too much either. So the case went into deadlock. As 1 day, 2 days and a week have passed, Yin's body was not found yet, and Lou's mood had gotten worse. Thinking of his wife, he couldn't sleep, so he drank alcohol. He drank so much until he passed out. But his sleep only lasted a few minutes, since his body started making strange impulses and movements. Lou was dreaming of his wife. How strange! In this dream, she was wearing a white dress and wedding accessories. With a trembling voice, Yin kept calling for help. Without considering the reality of the matter, Lu rushed over to hug Yin without listening to the words she was saying. While he was running to her, Yin suddenly disappeared. Then, in a flash, she appeared behind him to Lu's surprise. When Lu even didn't understand what was going on, he heard her voice calling for help once again. After that, she turned away. Lu stood alone in the dark space to look for Yin. He called his wife's name hoarsely, but to no avail. When he woke up, Lu's mouth kept calling out his wife's name. He painfully realized that it was just a dream. Lu couldn't stop thinking about it though. He really couldn't remember what his wife said before leaving. With a confused mood, Lu went to the other village to visit a friend. This was his friend from the construction site. Lu didn't hide anything. He told his friend everything from the wife's missing body to the dream he had last night. Hearing Lu's story, his face immediately changed. He replied to Lu that maybe he developed mental health problems and thus started hallucinating. Lu felt his friend wasn't believing. The friend even concluded that Lu was not mentally healthy, and therefore Lu was quite upset and responded a bit aggressively towards his friend. With a serious face and a sharp voice, Lu confirmed that his wife was definitely trying to tell him something. But no matter how serious Lu appeared to be, his friend could not believe such devilish stories. To help his friend overcome his sadness, he took Lu to go around the market. But it seemed that the bustle of the countryside market could not improve Lu's mood. After walking for a while, his friend suddenly stopped. He looked so surprised. He saw a wedding clothing stall. He couldn't imagine that wedding dresses could even be sold at this market. Because of the friend's interest, he asked Lu to take a look at the stall. Because of the enthusiasm of the friend, Lu agreed to have a look. Then, as soon as he took a glance at something, his face immediately changed. Inside the clothing stall, there was an outfit that looked exactly the same as the one Yin wore in his dream last night. Of course, Lu couldn't just leave. He rushed inside to ask the seller about it. He pointed at the outfit and asked her, "Excuse me, has anyone bought this outfit in recent days?" She answered that this was the newest outfit in the stall, and the first one was sold on the same date that Yin's body disappeared. She added that the person who bought it was the man who had just left her stall. He also bought hair clips. Saying nothing, Lu immediately chased after the man despite the advice to stop from his friend. Although everything was still not really clear, Lu also had a hunch that he would find his wife's body. Because the friend couldn't leave Lu alone, he also followed shortly behind Lu. The longer they followed the man, the more they felt like there was something odd about him, as the man showed unusual behavior which made him seem psychopathic by nature. After a long time following the strange man, they stopped in front of a house. Despite being a bit hesitant, they finally decided to open the gate and go inside the house. It was a big house like no other normal ones. They took notice of the Chinese symbol word for happy on the door. Lu didn't want to leave. The friend kept trying to convince Lu to leave because it was very embarrassing and impolite to break in someone's house without permission. But no matter what the friend said, Lu insisted on his intentions and walked silently over to the window and looked inside. Moments later, his face looked extremely angry. Lu kicked the door very hard. The friend who was discouraging Lu could not utter a word when the door opened. The scene in front of them was really terrible. The body in wedding clothes lying on the bed was Yin's, and the psychopath appearing to be a necrophiliac who was guilty of removing Yin's body was standing right there. After witnessing the scene, Lu immediately leaped towards the psychopath to beat him up, which he did. After all that transpired, the culprit was apprehended and arrested, all thanks to the strange dream Lu had. It would seem that Yin's soul indeed communicated with him in his dreams. Yin's body was returned to its resting place, but the pain in Lu's heart still wouldn't fade away easily.